Have you ever been afraid to speak English? Worried about making mistakes? Meet Caroline, a shy girl who dreamed of speaking fluently, but couldn't get past her fear of judgment. What happens when she faces an English speaking contest at school? Let's find out how Caroline turns her fear into confidence, one conversation at a time. Hello, my name is Caroline. I want to tell you my story, and I hope it inspires you. I am a shy girl from a small town. I live in a place where people are very kind, but most of them don't speak much English. Ever since I was little, I dreamed of working in a big international company. You know, the kind of company where people from different countries work together and speak English all the time. I imagine myself sitting at a big desk, wearing a smart outfit, and talking confidently with people from all over the world. But there was one big problem. I wasn't good at speaking English. Now, don't get me wrong, I could write in English pretty well. I loved writing short stories, essays, and letters in English. When it came to putting my thoughts on paper, I felt confident. But speaking? Oh no, that was a completely different story. Every time I had to talk in English, my heart would start beating fast. My hands would get all sweaty, and I'd forget the words I wanted to say. I'd get so nervous that sometimes I wouldn't even try to speak at all. It felt really embarrassing when I was in class and the teacher asked me to answer something in English. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for me to talk. But the words just wouldn't come out. I felt scared that I'd say something wrong or that people would laugh at me. Because of this, I avoided speaking in English whenever I could. I would think to myself, maybe I'm just not good at this. Maybe I should stick to writing and leave the speaking part to others. Even though I felt this way, I still had that dream in my heart. I wanted to work in an international company, and I knew I couldn't give up. Deep inside, I wished I could find a way to speak English confidently, just like the people I admired. That's where my journey began, and I want to share it with you so that you know it's okay to be afraid, but it's even better to try. One morning, as I sat in class listening to our teacher talk about upcoming school events, something caught my attention. Our teacher announced an English speaking contest. She explained that it was an opportunity for students to showcase their skills and build confidence in speaking English. My heart started racing as soon as I heard those words. I had always dreamed of standing on stage, speaking fluently in English, and sharing my thoughts with an audience. But deep down, I felt a wave of doubt. I wasn't confident in my ability to speak without making mistakes. My voice would tremble, and words would get stuck in my throat whenever I tried to speak English in front of people. What if I messed up? What if others laughed at me? The idea of participating scared me so much that I almost decided not to try. But before I could make up my mind, my best friend, Emma, nudged me. Caroline, she said with a big smile, you should join the contest. It's a great chance for you to practice. I looked at her, unsure. Emma, what if I make mistakes? Everyone will laugh at me, I replied, feeling nervous. Emma shook her head firmly. No one is perfect, Caroline. Mistakes are part of learning. You've been working so hard on your English. This is your moment to show everyone how far you've come. Her words made me pause and think. Maybe she was right. Perhaps this contest wasn't just about winning. It was about challenging myself. Emma's encouragement gave me a tiny spark of hope. I realized I had a choice: to let my fear control me or to take a step forward and face it. That night, I went home and stared at the contest flyer for a long time. My hands were trembling, but I made a decision. I would sign up for the contest. I didn't know how I would do it, but I promised myself that I would try my best. This moment became the turning point for me. It was the day I stopped letting fear hold me back and started believing that I could improve if I just kept trying. And I had Emma's words echoing in my mind. Mistakes are part of learning. The first step. I remember the day I decided to take my first step toward learning to speak English confidently. It wasn't easy, and honestly, I was scared. I knew I had to do something because I couldn't keep avoiding situations where I had to speak in English. It was holding me back from my dreams. So, I made a promise to myself. I would practice speaking English every single day, no matter how hard it felt. The first person I decided to practice with was my best friend, Emma. I chose her because she was always kind to me and never made fun of anyone. Still, when I opened my mouth to speak in English, I felt so awkward. The words felt strange on my tongue, and I kept thinking, what if I say something wrong? The first time I tried, I said something like, Emma, help me speak English? I knew it wasn't perfect, but Emma understood me right away. She smiled and replied, of course, Caroline. Let's start now. She made me feel comfortable, which gave me a little more courage. At first, I struggled a lot. I would forget words and stop mid-sentence because I wasn't sure how to continue. Emma would wait patiently and then gently correct me. If I said something wrong, she would repeat it correctly and ask me to say it again. For example, when I said, I know like apples, she corrected me with, it's I don't like apples, Caroline. Try saying it this way. It felt strange at first to have someone correct me all the time, but Emma's tone was never harsh. She always encouraged me by saying, you're doing great, Caroline. Keep going. You're improving. Her words made me feel like I could do it, even if it would take time. Every day, I spoke a little more with Emma in English. We talked about simple things like what we ate for breakfast or what we planned to do after school. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Little by little, I noticed that speaking English didn't feel as awkward anymore. Looking back, that first step was the hardest, but it was also the most important. Without it, I wouldn't have started this journey. Emma's support showed me that I didn't have to be perfect to start speaking English. I just had to be brave enough to try. Facing challenges. When I started speaking English, it felt really difficult. Sometimes I struggled with saying words correctly. For example, I would try to say a word like comfortable, but it came out all wrong, and I felt so awkward. I also forgot words in the middle of a sentence. I would start saying something like, I want to go to the, and then my mind would go blank. It was frustrating because I knew the words in my head, but I just couldn't say them out loud when I needed to. There were times when people laughed at my mistakes. Once I accidentally said, I's going, instead of I am going, and a few classmates chuckled. Their laughter made me feel small, like I was not good enough to speak in English. I wanted to run away and never try again. But then, I remembered my dream. I wanted to work in a big international company one day, and I knew English was important for that. I told myself, Caroline, if you give up now, how will you reach your dream? So, instead of letting my embarrassment stop me, I decided to keep trying. I started telling myself that mistakes were okay because they were part of learning. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to keep going. Every time I made a mistake, I promised myself I would learn from it. If someone laughed, I would smile and say, I'm still learning. Slowly, I started to care less about what others thought and more about reaching my goal. It wasn't easy, but I knew that each small step I took was bringing me closer to becoming confident in English. Finding a mentor. I remember the day when my English teacher, Miss Grace, noticed how hard I was trying to improve my English. She always had this warm, kind smile that made me feel comfortable, even when I was nervous. One afternoon, after class, she called me over and said, "Caroline, I've been watching your efforts, and I think you're doing a wonderful job." Her words made me feel proud and a little shy at the same time. Miss Grace then offered to help me practice speaking English. She told me, "Let's start with simple phrases that you can use in daily conversations. Once you feel confident, we'll build from there." I was so happy that someone believed in me and was willing to guide me. During our practice sessions, she taught me how to speak slowly and clearly, making sure every word was understandable. She said, "Caroline, don't worry about being perfect. The most important thing is that people understand you." Her advice felt like magic because it took away my fear of making mistakes. Miss Grace also encouraged me to try speaking in front of a small group of classmates. At first, I hesitated, but she said, "Trust yourself, Caroline. You're better than you think." Her belief in me gave me the courage to try. With her help, I learned that speaking English wasn't about saying everything perfectly, but about expressing myself with confidence. Miss Grace became more than just a teacher to me. She became my mentor, someone who truly cared about my growth. She made me believe that I could achieve my dreams, one step at a time. Daily practice. I knew that if I wanted to get better at speaking English, I had to practice every single day. At first, it felt strange and difficult, but I kept telling myself, practice makes perfect. So I decided to turn every little moment into an opportunity to practice. The first thing I did was start speaking English with my family and classmates. At home, I would greet my parents by saying, "Good morning," instead of our usual greetings. I would say things like, "May I have some water, please?" Or, "The food is delicious today." At first, my parents found it funny and even laughed a little, but they were very supportive. They started replying to me in English, even though they weren't very fluent themselves. It became a fun game for us. At school, I tried talking to my classmates in English. I would say, "Can I borrow your pencil?" Or, "What's the answer to question 3?" Some of my friends teased me, but others were very encouraging. One of them even said, "You're doing great, Caroline. Keep it up." That made me feel so happy and motivated. In my free time, I started listening to English podcasts. They were full of stories and conversations in simple English, and I could follow along. I also watched movies with subtitles. I chose movies that I had already seen before, so I knew the story. Reading the subtitles while hearing the characters speak helped me understand how words are pronounced and used in sentences. Sometimes I would pause the movie and try to repeat the lines myself. The most fun, and a little embarrassing, thing I did was talking to myself in the mirror. I would stand there, look at my reflection, and pretend I was giving a speech or having a conversation with someone. I'd say things like, "Hello, how are you today?" And then answer myself, "I'm fine, thank you." It felt silly at first, but it really helped me practice speaking without feeling nervous. Day by day, I could see myself improving. My sentences were smoother, my confidence grew, and I started enjoying the process. I realized that practicing every day, even in small ways, was the key to becoming better at English. Overcoming fear. One day, something happened that I will never forget. It was a normal morning, and I went to the small shop near my house to buy some snacks. The shopkeeper, there was a kind old man, but I had always spoken to him in my native language. That day, without even realizing it, I accidentally spoke in English. At first, I was so scared. I thought he might laugh at me or tell me that my English was bad. My heart started beating fast and I wanted to run away. But to my surprise, the shopkeeper smiled at me. He didn't laugh, and he didn't even seem to notice my mistakes. Instead, he replied to me in English. His words were simple, and he spoke very kindly. He even said, "You're doing a good job. Keep practicing." Those words felt like magic. For the first time, I realized that not everyone would judge me when I spoke English. That moment gave me a little spark of courage. If I could speak English to a stranger like the shopkeeper, maybe I could talk to other people too. It was a small step, but it made me believe in myself. From that day, I decided I wouldn't be scared of making mistakes anymore. Instead, I would focus on trying my best and learning something new every time I spoke. Joining a conversation club. I was so excited the day I heard about the English Conversation Club in my town. It sounded like the perfect place for someone like me who wanted to practice speaking English but often felt nervous. At first, I wasn't sure if I should go. What if people laugh at me? What if I can't say anything at all? These thoughts kept running through my mind, but then I remembered my dream of becoming confident in speaking English. So, I decided to take a deep breath and give it a try. When I walked into the club for the first time, I saw so many people. They were of all ages. There were older uncles, young students like me, and even a few little kids. Everyone seemed busy chatting and laughing in English. I felt nervous again, but a friendly lady smiled and invited me to join her group. She said, "Welcome. Don't worry about mistakes. We're all here to learn." That made me feel much better. As the session started, we introduced ourselves one by one. When it was my turn, my voice trembled, but I managed to say, "Hello, my name is Caroline, and I want to practice English." To my surprise, everyone clapped and cheered for me. It felt so good to be surrounded by people who understood my struggles and wanted to help me improve. In the club, we played fun games like word puzzles, storytelling, and role plays where we acted out conversations in English. One game I loved was where we had to describe an object in English without saying its name, and others guessed what it was. It was both fun and educational. The best part about the club was how supportive everyone was. Whenever I made a mistake, instead of laughing, they gently corrected me. One day, I mispronounced the word library, and an older member said, "It's okay. Just try again. It's library." His kind tone gave me the confidence to keep practicing. After a few weeks, I noticed I was speaking more fluently. I wasn't afraid to share my ideas anymore. I even started helping others in the club who were beginners like me. Joining the English Conversation Club taught me that learning a language is not about being perfect. It's about trying, making mistakes, and enjoying the process with people who support you. This club became my happy place, and it helped me believe in myself. Each time I left, I felt more confident, like I was one step closer to my dream. The contest day. The day of the English-speaking contest finally arrived, and I was so nervous. My heart was racing as I walked into the school auditorium. The big stage with bright lights looked intimidating, and I could see many students and teachers gathered there. Everyone seemed so confident, and it made me feel even smaller. I kept thinking, what if I forget my words? What if people laugh at me? These thoughts wouldn't leave my mind, and I felt a knot in my stomach. But then, I took a deep breath and reminded myself of all the practice I had done. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, speaking in front of Emma, my mirror, and even my little brother at home. I whispered to myself, "You've got this, Caroline. You can do this." It felt like I was trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. Before it was my turn, I went over my speech one last time. I stood in a quiet corner backstage and practiced the opening lines again and again. I kept repeating, "I can do this. I can do this," almost like it was a magic spell. My teacher passed by and gave me a thumbs up, which made me smile a little and gave me some courage. When my name was called, my legs felt like jelly as I walked onto the stage. The microphone stood tall in front of me, and I could see so many faces looking at me. My hands were shaking, but I gripped the microphone tightly to steady myself. I took another deep breath, smiled, and started my speech. At first, my voice sounded shaky, but as I spoke, I started feeling more comfortable. The words flowed just like I had practiced at home. I made only a few small mistakes, but I didn't let them stop me. Instead, I kept going, focusing on the message I wanted to share. I could see some people nodding and smiling, which made me feel even braver. When I finished my speech, the audience clapped, and I couldn't believe it. I had done it. Walking off the stage, I felt proud of myself. Even though I had been so scared, I realized that speaking in English wasn't as terrifying as I had thought. It was a big step, and I knew I was one step closer to my dreams. Unexpected applause. As I stood on the stage, my heart raced with nerves. I had spent so many days practicing my speech for the English-speaking contest, and now it was finally time to present it. I was scared, but I remembered everything I had learned. Slowly, I began to speak. The audience was quiet at first, but as I continued, I noticed something amazing. They started clapping. At first, I wasn't sure if they were clapping for me, but as I looked around, I saw smiles and encouragement on their faces. The clapping grew louder and louder, and it made me feel like I could do anything. It was like they were cheering for me because I had been brave enough to stand up there and speak in English, even if I wasn't perfect. When I finished my speech, I stepped back from the microphone and waited. The judges were writing notes, and I felt my palms get sweaty. I had done my best, but I still wasn't sure if it was good enough. Then, one of the judges stood up and smiled at me. "Caroline," she said, "your confidence and clarity were impressive. You spoke slowly and clearly, and we could understand every word you said. Well done." I felt a huge smile spread across my face. I couldn't believe it. The judges had praised me, and I felt proud of myself. Even though I didn't win first place in the contest, the applause and praise I received made me feel like I had won something even more important. I had won my confidence. I had shown myself that I could speak in English in front of a crowd without being afraid. I walked off the stage feeling lighter and happier than I had ever felt before. The clapping wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about all the hard work I had put in, the fears I had faced, and the strength I had found within myself. That day, I realized that speaking in English wasn't just about saying the right words. It was about being brave, trying my best, and not giving up. And that, to me, felt like the best victory of all. Building friendships. After the contest, something amazing happened that I never expected. Many of my classmates, who used to shy away from talking to me in English, suddenly started talking to me more. At first, I was a little surprised. I always thought that people would judge me if I made mistakes, but now it seemed like they were more comfortable talking to me in English too. They were not laughing at my mistakes. Instead, they were encouraging me. It felt so good because for the first time, I didn't feel like I was the only one struggling. I was just one of them, learning and growing together. One day during lunch break, as I was sitting alone, one of my classmates, Lily, came over and said, "Hey, Caroline, can we practice speaking English together?" I couldn't believe my ears. She was usually very quiet and always spoke in her own language with her friends. But now she was asking me to speak in English. I said, "Of course. I'd love that." We started chatting about simple things like our favorite food and hobbies. It wasn't perfect English, but we understood each other, and that was what mattered most. As we talked, more of my classmates joined in, and before I knew it, I was surrounded by a group of new friends. We shared our mistakes and laughed together. The best part was that no one was scared to speak, even if we made mistakes. We all understood that learning English was not about being perfect. It was about connecting with each other and having fun. Through these conversations, I made new friends who loved learning languages just as much as I did. We talked about English every day. Sometimes we even tried to use new words we had learned. It was like we were all part of a language club, but we didn't need to go anywhere special for it. All we needed was to speak with each other, support one another, and share what we had learned. I realized that speaking English wasn't about saying everything perfectly or impressing people with big words. It was about making connections and sharing ideas. Sometimes I didn't know the right word, but my friends would help me find it. Other times, they would make mistakes too, but we didn't care. We were all learning, and that made me feel happy and excited to speak more. The best part of this journey was that I didn't feel alone anymore. I realized that learning English was not just about speaking perfectly. It was about using it to talk to others, make friends, and share ideas. That made me more confident. And as I kept talking to my new friends, I knew I would only get better with time. Speaking English was no longer a scary thing. It was something I was excited to do every day. The journey continues. As I continued to practice speaking English every day, something started to change inside me. I noticed that I wasn't as nervous as I used to be when I spoke. At first, I could hardly put together a full sentence without feeling embarrassed or scared. But now, I could speak more confidently, and even though I still made mistakes, I didn't mind as much. It felt amazing to finally get the hang of it. I could see how much I had improved, and this made me feel proud of myself. Soon, I realized that my confidence wasn't just growing when I spoke to my family or friends. It was showing in my schoolwork too. My English grades went up, and I found myself reading books and understanding the stories better than before. I even started to enjoy writing essays in English. It was like the more I practiced speaking, the better I became at all the other parts of the language. I began to understand the grammar better, and I could use new words and phrases I had learned. One day, as I sat thinking about my future, a new goal popped into my head. I wanted to speak at a big international event someday. I thought about how amazing it would be to stand in front of people from different countries and speak confidently in English. I imagined how proud I would feel sharing my thoughts with others, and how it would help me with my future career. I set this goal in my heart because I wanted to show myself that I could do anything if I kept working hard. I wanted to prove that learning English wasn't just about being good at tests. It was about connecting with people from all over the world. As I worked towards this goal, I began to notice something wonderful happening around me. The more I practiced, the more I realized that my journey was inspiring others. My classmates, and even some of my friends who had been shy about speaking English started coming up to me. They told me that seeing me speak without fear made them want to try speaking English too. It felt so good to know that my story could help others. Every time someone would say, "I'll try speaking like you," I knew that I was making a difference. I wasn't just learning English for myself anymore. I was helping others take their first steps too. As I kept practicing, my fear of making mistakes slowly disappeared. I learned that it wasn't important to speak perfectly. What mattered was that I kept trying and that I kept learning, just like everyone else around me. Little by little, more and more people began speaking English without fear. And it wasn't just because they heard my story. It was because I helped them believe that they could speak too. I understood that learning a new language wasn't a race. It was a journey. We all move at our own pace, and it's okay to make mistakes along the way. With time, support, and practice, we can all speak confidently and help others do the same. That's what I learned from my journey, and that's what I want to share with anyone who's just starting out. So, remember, no matter where you are on your journey, you're one step closer to reaching your dreams. Just keep going, and you'll be amazed at how far you can go. Caroline's journey shows us that speaking English isn't about being perfect. It's about communicating and connecting with others. So, if Caroline can do it, so can you. Don't let fear stop you from speaking up. Lessons for you. 1. Start small. When Caroline began her journey to speak better English, she didn't aim to be perfect. Instead, she started by having small conversations with her best friend Emma. This allowed her to practice without feeling overwhelmed. Similarly, if you're just beginning to learn English, don't worry about speaking fluently right away. Start with short, simple exchanges. For example, greet someone, ask about their day, or say something as simple as "I like this" or "What time is it?" These small steps are key because they help you gain confidence and improve your skills. Don't be afraid to start small. It's the first step toward fluency. Every conversation is an opportunity to improve, even if it's just a few sentences. With time, you'll notice your vocabulary expanding and your confidence growing. 2. Embrace mistakes. At the beginning of her journey, Caroline was terrified of making mistakes. She was afraid that speaking incorrectly would make her look silly. However, she soon realized that mistakes are a crucial part of learning. Every mistake teaches us something new and brings us closer to mastering the language. The fear of making errors can hold you back, but when you embrace them, you open the door to progress. For instance, if you accidentally use the wrong verb tense or mix up words, it's okay. It's all part of the process. The key is to learn from each mistake. Pay attention to what went wrong, and the next time, you'll remember. As you continue practicing, you'll make fewer mistakes, and eventually, you will speak with more confidence. 3. Practice every day. Consistency is key to improving any skill, including speaking English. Caroline made a habit of practicing English daily, and this helped her improve quickly. She didn't just wait for lessons. She actively sought out opportunities to speak. Whether it was talking with her family, chatting with classmates, or even practicing by herself in front of the mirror, Caroline dedicated time to practice each day. You, too, should set aside a few minutes every day to speak in English. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make it a part of your routine. It could be as simple as practicing a few sentences before bed or speaking with a friend every morning. Over time, this regular practice will pay off, making you more comfortable and fluent. 4. Use simple phrases. Caroline's teacher encouraged her to speak slowly, and use simple phrases to start with. Trying to speak in complex sentences right away can lead to confusion and mistakes. It's better to speak clearly and confidently using simple words rather than struggling with complicated vocabulary or grammar. For example, instead of saying, "I will have arrived in the city by 5 p.m. tomorrow," you can say, "I will arrive at 5 p.m." This helps you to communicate more effectively and focus on getting your message across. As your confidence builds, you can gradually introduce more complex phrases, but always prioritize clarity over complexity. 5. Find a supportive environment. One of the best ways Caroline found to practice speaking was by joining an English conversation club. In this safe, supportive environment, she could practice speaking without the fear of being judged. Surrounding yourself with people who are also learning English or who are patient and encouraging is essential. Look for groups or communities where you can practice speaking English freely. Whether it's a language exchange group, an online class, or even a study group with friends. Feeling supported and encouraged will make the process more enjoyable and less intimidating. A friendly environment helps you take risks, which is necessary for growth. 6. Listen to English regularly. Listening to English is just as important as speaking it. Caroline made sure to listen to English podcasts and watch movies with subtitles. This exposed her to different accents, vocabulary, and sentence structures. To improve your speaking, immerse yourself in English as much as possible. Listen to podcasts, watch English TV shows or movies, or even listen to music with English lyrics. You don't need to understand every word, but over time, you'll become more familiar with the flow of the language. This practice helps your brain get used to the natural rhythm and patterns of English speech, which will eventually help you speak more naturally. 7. Speak to strangers. In one of her first big steps, Caroline overcame her nervousness and practiced speaking English with a shopkeeper. At first, it felt intimidating, but she realized that most people are kind and supportive when you make an effort to speak in their language. It's the same for you. Don't be afraid to start a conversation with strangers, even if it's just asking for directions or making a simple request. People will often appreciate that you're trying to speak their language and will encourage you. The more you interact with others, the more comfortable you'll become speaking in real-life situations. 8. Build confidence through small wins. Although Caroline didn't win the speaking contest, she felt incredibly proud of herself for speaking in front of an audience. Achieving small wins, like having a conversation with a stranger or successfully explaining something in English, can significantly boost your confidence. Celebrate these small successes. Each one builds your self-esteem and motivates you to keep pushing forward. Remember, the journey to fluency isn't about being perfect. It's about making progress. When you see how much you've grown, it will inspire you to keep practicing. 9. Don't focus on perfection. One of the most important lessons Caroline learned was that speaking English isn't about being perfect. It's about communication. Don't let the fear of speaking imperfectly hold you back. The goal of speaking a language is to express yourself and understand others, not to be flawless in every word. Perfection is an unrealistic standard, and focusing too much on it can make you more anxious. Instead, embrace the idea that you are communicating, and that's the most important thing. If you don't understand something or make a mistake, simply try again. Every conversation is an opportunity to improve. 10. Make learning fun. Caroline made sure to have fun while learning. She found an English club where she met new friends, which made the experience enjoyable. When learning becomes fun, you're more likely to stay engaged and motivated. Try finding activities you love that also involve English, like watching your favorite shows in English, reading books, or even playing games in English. These activities will help you learn without feeling like you're forcing yourself to study. The more you enjoy the process, the easier it will be to stay committed to practicing. 11. Set goals for yourself. Caroline set a clear goal: to speak English at an international event. Having a goal like this helped her stay focused and motivated. You too should set specific, achievable goals to keep yourself on track. It could be as simple as having a 5-minute conversation in English or delivering a short speech. By setting goals, you can see your progress and feel a sense of accomplishment when you achieve them. Whether small or large, goals will give you something to strive for and will help you stay motivated as you continue improving your English. 12. Inspire others. Caroline's dedication to learning English inspired her classmates to speak English too. When you share your journey and progress, you can inspire others to take the leap and try speaking English as well. The more you talk about your progress and encourage others, the more you will stay motivated. Helping others also helps reinforce your own learning. As you grow in your English skills, you'll naturally encourage those around you, creating a supportive community of learners. Keep practicing, keep growing, and you'll see the results. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear how you overcame your fears when speaking English. Tell us in the comments below.